And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's suggestion comes to us from CJM, who asked the age-old immortal question, what is the Pokemon team of Michael Morbius, a.k.a. the Living Vampire, from Marvel / Spider-Man and Marvel are the same thing, but Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. You'll also note, I do not have the underappreciated, Oscar-worthy Jared Leto equivalent here. No, we're looking at the actual Michael Morbius. And yeah, this one wasn't as easy as you might think it was. The reason for that is when you get past the power set of the character, there's not much there to go off of. There's hardly any personality that really warrants a specific Pokemon. There's one or two things in his backstory I looked into. His abilities and all that are really all we have to go off of. So it was kind of a tricky endeavor, but I think I got at least a suitable-ish team here. Let me know ultimately what you think about it. So starting out first, we have Golbat. Obviously, a bat-type Pokemon, being based off a vampire, had to be on the team. And we have actually not a lot of bat-based Pokemon. You have the Zubat line, obviously. You have the Swoobat line. Lunala is, by all accounts, based off of bat to one degree or another. And that's pretty much it. Off the top of my head, I could not think of another bat-based Pokemon. If we end up getting the Australian region, which some people are theorizing for Gen 10, that'd be a perfect place to introduce like a flying fox, like that type of Pokemon. That'd be a perfect place. But no, I went with Golbat. Now, why, you may ask, not Crobat or Zubat? Zubat, I feel, is too weak. But Crobat's too strong. Morbius is not like a S-tier level threat if we're going by threat. He's not an alpha level threat. He's not a world level ending threat. So he doesn't necessarily need the strongest Mon for each member of his team. Also, he's not that fast. He can glide. Psionically, he can glide, but he can only do it like 35 miles an hour, an average car speed. And that doesn't really track for Crobat, who is no longer the fastest. For a while, he was the fastest Pokemon around, but is still up there as one of the fastest Pokemon around. So Golbat furthermore works because Golbat's Pokedex entries lean into the whole draining the life force out of people, aka drinking their blood. So I decided to go with Golbat on that, definitely. After Golbat, though, things started to take a dip because I'm like, okay, I got the vampire part of him. What now? So I had to stop and think. Okay, let's look more into his backstory. He was a scientist. In fact, he was a Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and geneticist. And his accident was what led him to become Morbius. So I thought we could work with that a little bit. What kind of Mon would a scientist have at his disposal? Being very intelligent, it's most likely he'd have a psychic type on his team. And psychic types have many abilities that would be very useful in aiding in the lab. I ultimately went with Reuniclus. Reuniclus is based partly off of, if I'm mistaken, let me know, kind of like a fetus growing and cells dividing. You go from, I'm now just blanking on the name of its first. A duozen is the second form. What was the first form again? I'm looking that up right now because it's my mind's going blank on the first form of this Pokemon's evolutionary line. And I hate the fact that it is. Okay, so the psychic type, Reuniclus, Duozen, and Solosis. That's it. Solosis, Duozen, Reuniclus. And basically, it's the idea of cells and a fetus kind of dividing and growing inside a psychic membrane. So there's the biochemic aspect of it, the biological aspect. But beyond that, it's a psychic type. It can learn moves like psychic, confusion, telekinesis, all those kind of things, which would be very aidful in a scientific setting. So you got the scientific kind of inspiration for the Pokemon, as well as the ability to actually aid a scientist in the lab. So ultimately, I thought that was not a bad option. But also, what else do we work with in science labs, especially when you're a biochemist? Well, you work with heat. You work with chemicals and heating those chemicals using Bunsen burst, things along those lines. So something that could use fire, I thought was also a good option to have on the team. My option for this one was Litwick. Now, Litwick is I haven't used Litwick in a video yet, I think I'm not even sure I've used any of the Chandelure Litwick lines, Lampet or Chandelure. Maybe Chandelure. But either way, so Litwicks actually feed off the life force of others, and their candle kind of grows from that. But one Litwick is not going to be that big of a problem, I think. More to the point, obviously, trainers catch Litwicks and use them, so they can obviously train them to not kill people. But more importantly, he's a candle. When, like, say he can he uses fire techniques and just burn and just stand under a beaker and heat something up, do the whole sciencey thing through the tubes. And he can also help aid with reading, say, like, important notes at night, when even, like, during power outages, he could be an invaluable aid for something like that. So I actually like the idea that Litwick, also being a ghost type, makes him a bit more morbid, leaning towards the vampiric aspects of him. Now, beyond that, though, I ran into some snags. Now, Morbius actually isn't, despite how some people, despite how it may have started, at least initially, is not a villain. He's more of an anti-hero. He does work for governments, armor. He's worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. before. So, one idea I liked is him being given a Pokemon that represents the fact that you're now working for us. And what better to work for a place like Armor than an armored-based Pokemon? I like Bisharp. Bisharp looks like it's a soldier. I mean, it's based off of Bishop, sure, but and Pawniard's based off Pawn, Kingambit's based off King. But point being, it's based kind of on a samurai, soldier, kabuki kind of thing. And this would make sense for, people in the line of duty to have something that would be there to protect them. Bisharps are also pretty darn powerful. Kingambits are stronger, obviously, because we got them now, but Bisharp is actually pretty darn powerful. Its base stat total, if I'm not mistaken, is like in the 500s. One second, I'm gonna look that one up real quick. Bisharp, where is your base stat total at? It's base stat total. Where are you? There you are, Bisharp. Its base stat total, if I'm not mistaken, 40, 20, 300, 425, 430. It comes in, I believe, right at 490. If I'm reading this right, it comes in at 493. Yeah, it comes in at 490. So just under the 500 marker. Kingambits, I believe, have like a full-on 100 more into their base stat total. I think, let's see, 150, 195, to 330, 450, 550. Oh, yeah, okay, they got about 60 more, but still, they got about 60 more. The Kingambits are powerful. Their defense, HP, and physical attack are very high. They're the highest stats. And honestly, their slowest thing is their speed. And even that at 50 it's not great, but it's hardly like the slowest mons around. I mean, even its special defense is still 85, which is perfectly fine. And being steel and dark means it's immune to both psychic, which are special attacks, and poison, which are physical and special attacks, and it's resistant to ghost types, which are almost always special attacks. So you know what? Kingambit, I'm not playing with one right now, but maybe I'll try to aim to get one on my team next game. They're not easy to get, though. It took me a while to catch mine. Of course, once you unlock raids, you can catch them in the terror raids. I digress. So, yeah, I like the idea that one of them on his team, it was not originally going to be his, but because he started working for these organizations, they felt you need to have this mon on your team. So that's where I go with this. The last ones. Now, one of the aspects of Morbius that I did want to work with is the fact that he's not a naturally born vampire. He's not a supernatural vampire. He is a scientific vampire. He's an accident. So how do you represent that? Well, what about a Pokemon that is either an accident, and unfortunately that's a little hard to kind of gauge what Pokemon are accidents, per se. You could go maybe with like a Porygon Z for that. You could maybe make an argument that Shedinja is technically an accident, but it's not even an accident, it's a leftover. But what about something where you were trying to create something and you didn't quite get there, but almost did? I went with Type Null. You could you could see a scenario where in the Pokemon world he was working on a Type Null, working on something, ended up creating a Type Null. The Type Nulls already exist, they can be made. Maybe he accidentally made one by mistake, and now he has his Pokemon with him. Unfortunately, him and Type Null probably don't get along as well as, say, Type Null other trainers, so he can't really manage it into a Silvally. But still, Type Null, I think, actually would make sense. It's a hodgepodge of things, true, which would work better for someone who's a hodgepodge of things. Like, if and ever I get around to a, say, Metamorphose episode from DC, he got announced for the Superman Legacy movie. That would be a Mon that immediately goes on the team because that's a hodgepodge. Like he's kind of like his form is just a hodgepodge. By the by, real quick, spend maybe, I don't know, 20 seconds talking about this. I'm really looking forward to the Superman Legacy movie. But we've now had we've had 4 other separate superhero castings in the movie. And my one minor concern, obviously we just have casting right now, is that I don't know I'm wondering how much of this is still going to be Superman's movie. It still needs to be Superman Legacy. I digress. So anyway, last but not least, one of the things he picked up was the ability to use hypnosis. So I'm like, okay, perfect. Hypnosis is a little Pokemon move. We can work with that. And I'm looking through, I'm like, none of these really scream Morbius for hypnosis. Like, Malamar's too evil to be on the team. Gengars are too mischievous. So, what's something I can use? And I looked, and I saw one. And it was from the BDSP, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl Pokedex. I'm like, really? Because I wonder, I'm like, why can't this guy learn it? And then he found out he can, but in that game. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, could that work? And you know what? I said, why not? Because we don't have a legend or mythical on the team yet, not including Type Null, who doesn't have the stats for it. And in a sense, it kind of works. So the guy who ended up making the cut to be on the team ultimately was Darkrai. Darkrai, and the reason for Darkrai is, again, it learns hypnosis through how was it again that it learned hypnosis? One second here. It learned hypnosis. There we go. It learned hypnosis. God, everything's going everywhere. Okay, there we go. It learned hypnosis, I believe, in BDSP, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just see here in terms of moves it can learn. Let's see here. Natural. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In I believe it was in Legend Arceus BDSP. It can learn hypnosis naturally. In fact, it has it at level 20. Now that's not always the case for Darkrai, but by the way, it was just so awesome to be able to catch a Darkrai for the first time ever. Darkrai is one of my favorite mythicals, just from design alone, and it was so awesome to actually be able to have one on my team. Anyway, so he can learn hypnosis, but beyond that, Darkrai's, there are obviously multiple Darkrai's. They kind of established, but Darkrai's aren't all evil. And in fact, which movie was it where Dialga and Palkia came out and he had to kind of stop them? He wasn't actually a bad individual. The fact that he induced nightmares just kind of was a byproduct of his existence. And so the concept of a Pokemon where it's similar to like Absol, they're depicted as something horrible, sinister, evil, a monster, but they're not actually. Works with Morbius. He doesn't want to hurt people, really. He's driven by bloodlust most of the time. So this actually, I think, makes a lot of sense in the context of Morbius's backstory. Someone who was kind of forced into what he was by an accident, and Darkrai not so much, but still, wreaks havoc, ends up hurting people, but not really intentionally, because he's kind of he either has to or he has no control over it, and the dark aspect of it as well. I think that kind of works in favor. I think it works in his favor. So, as always, the last question on the list today is, how balanced is this team? And I'm going to tell you right now, let's get into the weaknesses of the team real quick. You have two dark types. One is a steel type, though, so it mitigates the dark type's weakness to, it's got types 4 weakness. So, half the team, because the type null is normal, half the team, although I believe Type Null also has does Type Null have the ability to change its typing? I think that's only still Volley. Type Null, I think, Type Null just has Pressure. That's what it is. And I'm double checking that little factoid right now. Yeah, so Type Null is just a normal type. So half this team already gets clapped by fighting types. The dark, now, the steel type does mitigate dark's weakness to bug for Bisharp, but unfortunately not for Reuniclus or Darkrai. So they're also kind of effed in the A. Litwick is a ghost type, being it's also weak to ghost types and dark types. So it and Reuniclus both have a severe weakness to those guys as well. Not to mention, Litwick has a weakness to water. And then, yeah, Golbat has a weakness to electric. He's got a weakness to steel. So fighting Bug and Ghost can really do some harm to this team. Some serious harm. Now, Golbat can at least take on the fighting types to a certain degree with flying-based moves. Reuniclus can also take out fighting types with Psychic, so it's not completely KO'd by fighting. But unfortunately, the Bug and the Ghost type is just something that half of this team doesn't really have a good answer for, at minimum. So fighting Ghost and Dark and Bug are four very heavy. Why did I say two? Four heavy weaknesses of this team. But on the other side of the fence, though, Psychic is still strong against fighting, so there's one good Psychic. Ghost has 2 immunities, so there's that. And obviously, Dark is very strong against Psychic, so it's a good team against Psychic. It's a good team against Ghost overall. But it's a very mishmash team, admittedly. And remember, I don't create these teams for balance. I create these teams to figure out what makes sense to go on the team. So, yeah, that'd be Morbius's Pokemon team. But this is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Well, thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And I'll see you folks for the next one. Have a good one.